Good day coders and welcome back to Bugger Ray. So in this video we'll be covering creating this English Premier League standing navbar component. So what we'll be doing is creating this beautiful navbar here where the user can actually hover on the different tabs, right, and actually route to the different tabs, right, pages through clicking these tabs. Right, so the idea over here is as the user clicks on this tab, it will actually route to a different page, right? But currently these pages aren't created, so from the previous video we did initially just create this English Premier Leagues table. That's why when we click on it, then that shows up for us, right? But all these other tabs will just route to this test component. So with that all being said, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. So now let's get to work. Alright coders, so before we touch the code, let's first have a run through of what we had prepared for this video. So in the themes.scss folder, we just added this nav bar background color, right? That's just it. And then what we have from the project that we have is just this English Premier League table, right, which we created from a previous video where we run through creating all this nice table, right? So now question is, what do we want to achieve from this video? So we want to create this nav bar component which will actually allow the user to navigate through the different pages, right? So how we go about doing that is we'll wanna go to the components folder, right? So it's the src.app /app/component, right? So now we're in this components folder. I'd want to clear. So I tried zooming in so that the our viewers can actually see the code clearly, right? So in this component, then we'd want to do is generate a component which will use the ng g for generate, right? And then c for component, and then nav bar, right? And then voila, now let's wait for that to generate. So now Angular is done generating that component. Alright, so now we can go to this components folder, right, and see what we have. So what we have currently is just that this components works, right? But now we know that we want our nav bar to actually show at the top here for every page we're going to be navigating to, right? So how we can go about doing that is, but first before we I show you that, let's just quickly ng serve to run the project. Okay, let's now wait for that. So whilst we wait, so we'd want to create this navigation page, right? And then have this nav bar actually rendering at the top above this router outlet, right? So that each page that we are routing to shows the navigation at the top. So how we go about doing that is actually coming here to our apps dot components.html, right? And right here we'd want to say app /navbar, right? So that will actually now render something there. So let's reload. Oh yeah, so now we see that we've got this app, this navbar works, right, which serves as a navigation bar, but we know that this is not what we actually want to do, right? So how we go about now making this nav bar is come to this nav bar, this HTML file, right? So first and foremost, what we want to do is create a nav bar /container, which is just gonna contain our nav bar, right? And then the next thing that we would want to do is have an unordered list, right? And then what we'd have in this list is this. So I put this in my sticky notes. These are all the links that we're gonna need to render in our navbar, right? So I'll just comment it out here at the top so that you get to see what we'll need, right? So we'll have this link, and then the first link will be matches. Okay, now what I would want to do is copy, paste. That's for the news table, stats, and players, right? So right now it will be static, right? So don't kill me right now. Like we'll do some changes to make it a bit dynamic, right? So we'll have the stats, right? And then we'll have players, right? So currently this is what we have, right? So what we then want to do is actually see what we have, right? So now we have these links, which is now the matches, the news, table, stats, and players, right? And then another thing that we'd want to do is have this logo section, right? For the logo section, we'll say logo section, right? Logo slash header section, basically, right? So what we'll have in there is an image. So another thing that I didn't mention when I began is that I also had this image downloaded, right? Which is this Premier League icon, right? So to get that, it's two dots forward slash double dots forward slash double dots forward slash. So I'm navigating to this assets folder and then Premier League's icon, right? So I'll just call it Premier League icon, right? So just save that, right? And then what I would then want to do is actually have a paragraph, right? That's gonna render Premier League, right? Premier League, right? Premier League. So this is where I'm actually cloning this UI from, right? So I use this Premier League standings, right? So that's the name of the header, Premier League standings, right? So we'll go about saving that and now get to see what we have, right? So we already have our navbar, but at this point we can actually see that the styling is not as great, right? So what we'd want to do is first remove these comments, right? Go about saving that, and then actually going to our SCSS folder, right? We'd first want to import, right? We'd want to import our src, is it forward slash src forward slash themes, and then themes.scss, right? Alright, so that's done, right? So the first thing is we would want to target our first class, which is the navbar container. Is that spelled correctly? I like copying it because sometimes the spelling can get off, right? So I just paste that there. So first thing I'd want to do is actually test with the background color, like making it background. That would be the nav bar background, right? Background color, right? I don't know if I spelled that correct. I think I did. Oh yeah, so now we've got this nav bar background color showing, right? So alright, with that being said, the next thing that we'd first want to do is actually get to style our logo section, right? So within this navbar container, we'll now target this logo section, right? So what we want to do there is actually display flex it, to also display flex, right, which will then change how it's displayed into a single line. And then we'd want to say flex wrap. We can have a flex wrap and call it wrap. So now this would be set up in just a single line. So what we'll then want to do is now target our image, right? Because our image is here. Set a width and height for the image probably to 30 pixels, and the height to 30 pixels, right? So that's a nice image we have there. And then we'd want to set the margin left to, so the margin left would actually have some spacing between this image and the text, right? So the margin left would be set to around about 16 pixels. I think that would be fine. Sorry, my bad, it's margin right. It's actually margin right? Because we want that other side to be shifted, right? And then what we'd want to do is then now target this P tag, right? Which the color for that would actually be white, right? We'll use this white color, right? Alright, now we see that that's sorted out. So another thing that you can do to help you like with the styling is this navigate, this inspect, right? Where you actually inspect your actual components. So we see that these two are not actually aligned, right, at the same like line, the icon and actually this component over here, right? So how we can go about setting that up is actually here. We see that this paragraph has this padding, which we just wanna, or should I it's the margin, my bad, this margin of 16, right? So we'd firstly wanna just remove that margin, right? So we'll set that margin to 0 pixels. So 0 pixels, right? So now that is now pushed to the top, right? And then what we'll then want to do is actually for the logo section, we'd want to set its height to like 50 pixels, right? It's actually 50 pixels, right? And then now we have that, and now set the align items to the center. So how align items to the center will work in this instance, it would align it vertically, right, to the center. Now we've got both of these like aligned to the center. But now if you had to change this flex direction to column, then align items, center will be aligning it horizontally instead of vertically, right? So now since that has been done, right, now let's move on to the next section. So whereby this section is actually where we get to do the stylings for this what do you call this unordered list. Is it unordered list? Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. I don't know, you can correct me on the comment section. So what we have there is actually this unordered list, right? And then what we want to do with this unordered list is actually set its display to flex, right? So now we have that in one line. But there's something that we see, right, in this unordered list is that already by default it's got this padding set to it, which is like 40 pixels, and this margin set to 16 pixels, top and bottom, and 0 pixels for the left and right. So we'd want to do fixes for that, right? So we'd want to first set the padding to 0 pixels and the margin to 0 pixels, right? Padding and margin to 0 pixels, right? So now that has been sorted out for us, right? And then we'd now want to target this list, right? And then we'd want to change its styling to remove these black dots over here. Okay, let me first change the color to white. So let me just say color equals to this white color, right? And just close that off, right? We see that that has been changed to this white color, but we also see that we've got these dots. Okay, but for now we can't see it. Let's just say margin left and set that to like 10 pixels. I just want you to see these dots I'm talking about, right? Let's make it 20. Maybe 20 will make them visible, right? We've got these dots that we just don't want, right? So how we can go about like removing them is actually set the list style, I think it's list style, to none, right? Then that will just automatically just remove those dots, right? So with that being said, right, we have like got to somewhere, right? We've got somewhere with this actual thing, right? So what we'll now want to do is actually remove this, right? And then we'd actually want to set the width to 100%. This width to 100%, right? And then we want to say the width of this, right? The width of HLI is 100, so we'd want to calculate that to be 100% divided by, I think it's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's 5, right? And then we'd want to close that. Right, so now we see that these things are like equally now spread out, right? And then what we can also see is that this text in this these links, right? These lists, right? I meant to say, is not set to the center. So how we can go about fixing that issue is we can set this display to flex, right? And then just set its justify content to center. I know one would argue that they would just set the text align to center. That would work, but the reason why I'm using this, you'll see that why I'm actually going about setting this display flex and actually setting the justify content to center, right? So now we've got this set up for us, but we see that it's not, we don't have like enough room for this actually. So how we like create some room is actually have the height of that to like 50 pixels, right? So now we've got the height set to 50 pixels. But now what we notice by this is now we've got an issue whereby now the links are actually set up to the top. That's why I just don't want to go on the offset to using this text align to center, because it would only solve this issue of just vertically aligning the text to the center. Yet I would also want to align it like horizontally to the center. One would say they would use like margins for that. Yeah, you can go about that approach, but I personally feel like this one is better. So how to go about setting it to the center? I'll align the items to center, right? Go about saving that, and now we've got that equally like set to the center, right? So what I'll also like to do is actually create a cursor pointer, right? A pointer when I actually hover on these links, right? So there are two approaches to go about using this, right? You can just say cursor equals to that pointer, right? This will actually, now let me just, this will actually, you know, do this pointer image when you actually point on these specific links, right? So you can see if I remove that, right, I won't have that cursor, right? So let me go about bringing it back, right? In some instances, you would want to just use this if you're not actually going to be doing some changes as you hover on a specific item. So in this, there is the second approach whereby we can just set the hover. So upon hovering, so this is hover. Upon hovering, first and foremost, let me just so I had the background color of this, right, set to that. So now just make it an RGBA, right? Or let me first do this so you can see what I mean. So I'll just set the background, just background, to like orange. I think orange will work out just for now, right? So, oh, I need to say this ampro Sam, this and, right? So as I hover to that, I'll have this orange color, right? So in order to have a cursor, you can also do a cursor upon hovering, right? Upon hovering, then do a cursor. That will still work. So there's two approaches to that. Is either you'd want to do it this way, right? And just remove it there, right? And say upon hovering, it will still do the cursor, or you can just put it here. So since here upon hovering we're also changing the background color, so you could just put this cursor pointer to this hover, right? But if we want actually changing a background, we would just have cursor there, because it would be just redundant to just have cursor there if it's just we could also use it on the list, right, itself. So now what I would want to do is actually set this to nav bar, right? Nav bar background color. Nav bar background color, right? Okay, in this instance there is a change, but we just can't see it. So how I can go about solving that is actually like slightly decreasing the opacity of this background color for this navbar container. So how I can go about doing that is setting the RGBA, right, to that background color, and setting the background opacity, right, to 0.8, right. So this will slightly decrease like the color of this nav bar, and then as now I hover, I'll have now a darker color on this actual links, right? So I can just increase it a bit to 9ish, so that it's just not too dark, right? And then now I will have this nice effect on upon hovering on each list, right? So yeah, another approach, one would also want to use just opacity, right, and actually change that. But with that, there's actually an issue with that. Is sometimes when you go about using this approach of just changing the opacity to some sort, the parent class normally then changes the opacity for other background colors with that are in the child component. So you just wouldn't want to do that. So this RGBA will just do the trick for you, right? So yeah, we've done that, right? So another thing that we now want to do is actually set out this nav bar, so it actually starts from where this table starts to this actual part, right? So how we can go about doing that is actually get to see how we did the padding, right? So what we will see is that we added like a 50-50 padding to the left and right, and top to bottom we used this 10 pixels, right? So man, with that we can just use the same thing, right? We can say padding is 10, but we can just use 0 pixels top and bottom, and just now use 50 pixels to the left and right. So now we'll see that now this is starting, yeah, exactly where the table starts, right? And now we've got this nice hover effect, right? But now looking at this EPL table, we see that upon clicking on a specific table or something, right, we've got this border, this white border right at the bottom, right? And we can see that this thing gets highlighted upon just selecting a specific a tab, right, in this nav bar. So how we can go about adding that change is actually first let's do it in a static way, right? I would wanna just set this class, right, to an active class. I'll call this class active, right? And then I'd wanna first go there. Oh, let me just call it nav active, right? I think this is a proper name. Let me go to now the CSS, right, and change that for the CSS. So here I'd say this will be located under this this unordered list, because this is just the class in this unordered list, right? So just under this list item, we'll have this nav active, right? So we'd want to change that background color for that. So the background, actually, we'll set that to nav bar, right? And then I think it's background, and then we'll have color. Save that, right? So since we've got that saved, oh, we're in the wrong link. We can see now that this active one is actually set to this dark color, right? So now we know that in every link which will have this active class, then we'll have that darkish color, right, in there, right? Another thing we'd want to add is this border, right? This border bottom. So this border bottom, we'd want to set it to 2 pixels, set its type to solid, right? And the color, we want to set it to this white color, right? Okay, we see that now. With that done, now we have this slight nice color showing there at the bottom, right? So another thing we'd want to do, let me see if I've got a box shadow, a border box, not a border box. I wanted to add a box shadow style, right? Box shadow, and with that I'll just add a box shadow, right, with this $sign, and then this would be what do you call this, 0, I think 5 pixels, yeah, 0 pixels, 5 pixels, and 10 pixels. I normally get this the wrong way. I normally do it in the wrong way around, right? But I'll fix that if there's an issue. 0.025, right? 0.025, right? Let me just add this box shadow. So here I would want to set this box shadow for this whole thing, right? So box shadow will be set for box shadow, right? This is box shadow. Let me save. Okay, that's saved successfully. And yeah, we see that we created this box shadow. I would like to think. Okay, so that's done already, but now we see that we have got an issue because this class is currently just set to static, right? So how we can go about fixing that is by this. So I've got this JSON already prepared for us right here, but I'll just have run through like an explanation on what this JSON is, right? So over here I would want to create a variable called Navbar List, right, which is an array, and it will store this JSON object, right? So I'd want to paste that, right? So what I have in this JSON object is actually the name, the active, name and active basically. So with the name, it will actually be the name of the tab, and then with the active, it will just state whether it's active or not, right? So now I won't actually need this. Oh no, man, just yeah, I won't need all of this, right, until here, right? So what I would want to do is actually run an ng-for that's gonna iterate through that array and let this tab of navbar list, right, because it's a navbar list. So what I would want to render from that is from the tabs.name, because I wanted to actually render the name. I didn't save this, right? Alright, so we see now this is rendered, right, for us. So if we reload again, we see that we have this, and that, right? But we, in our CSS, right, we had added like a class that caters for a nav active, right? An active a link or an active tab. So how we can go about doing that is actually set a check, right? So we'll use this ng class directive, right? And actually set like a class which is that nav active. So nav active, right? So with this nav active class, we'll actually say that if the tab, right, dot active is true, then just set that to that nav active class, right? Since in our JSON file we've got this first element of this array, right, to active true, then the matches should be highlighted in a dark color. So we see as we reloaded, right, that this color, this tab, this tab, right, has this dark color to it, right? So if we were to change that to false, right, all of them won't have like we won't have an active. But if I were to change this one to true, right, that second one will have that active, right, tab to it, right? So now let's set that to false and just set the first one to true actually, right? So we see now that the matches actually has this active state, right, as this page loads for the first time, right? All right, so with that being done, what we'll then want to do is actually, upon clicking a specific tab, we'd want to change the active state, right? So how we'd go about doing that is by this, right? We'd want to have an on-click function, right? So this is a click event. On clicking that event, we'd want to just change the tab, right? Or you can call it switch tab, right? And then we'll just want to pass in this tab state, right? Or this tab object, right? So now we'll go into this navbar, this ts file, right? Have that function over there, and then which I will call tab. I'll call that tab, which is of type any, this rate, right? So I'll have now a for loop, right, which will iterate through all these tabs, right, through all these navs of this navbar list, right, item, right? So how we'll do is we'll have a check that will say if the nav equals to the tab, right? If the nav equals to this tab, then what you'd want to do is actually say the nav.active should be set to true, right? Else, for anything else, we want to say the nav.active equals to false, right? So yeah, so that's how it's gonna work, right? So let me save that and actually test this click. So I see that when I click on this link, it changes this navigation, right, throughout. So me clicking on the different tabs, that will actually change that navigation, right? So another thing, if you want to add some spacing to the top of this logo, right, you can set a margin top, right? If you want to just add some spacing to the top, right, you can set a margin top to, let's see if in our themes folder we do have some padding that's linked to that. I think main padding will do the trick for us, which is just 10 pixels, right? So main padding. Alright, so now we've set just a slight we have set let me see. Nah, let me see. Do we need that? Let me check. Yeah, I think it's okay. I think it is okay. I think it is okay. Alright, yeah. So yeah, now you can switch throughout the links, right? But now, at this rate, you actually not seeing any change or routes to the clicking of the different tabs, right? Just for this video, I'll just give you a bonus, right? So the bonus is actually me rendering a specific page upon me clicking a specific link, right? So with that, I'll just have. Do I have a test page? Let me see. Should I use a test page? That actually makes me think. Okay, let me just move back and then let me just go to pages. Just see the pages, right? And then let me just generate a component which is called this test page. Yeah, I think this is just a smart way of doing it. Alright, so now let's just wait for Angular to generate that component for us. Interesting how it's actually taking time. Alright, so as we wait for that, so the idea is actually as we click on this specific link, right, it should actually route to that specific link, right? So, oh yeah, so the first thing that we'd want to do is actually, let me see. Let's go to the apps.route, right, to just set up our routes, right? So we'd want to say that if the path is actually table, right, then we'd want it to, man, now I see an issue, but actually it's not that much of an issue, but I mean, oh, sorry for that. That then component, right? We want to render a component which is the home component, which we shouldn't have done. We should have called it like table component, but yeah, you can change that on your side, right? Actually, so what we'll need to do is, okay, let me remove that. So test component, right? We'd want to render the test component if it's empty, right? So that should display something like test component works, right? So now let's just clear the console, right, and ng serve. Let's run through this ng serve and see what we have, right? So upon it being on the home page, it should actually render this test component, and when we navigate to the table, we should actually see that English Premier League's table rendering, right? Okay, it's quite slow, right? So as we wait for that, okay, let's see. I want to see this. So yeah, we've got this router outlet which is actually going to be controlling our route, and then we've got this app.nav, right, this app navigation that will enable us to view the navigation for all pages, right? Yeah, we are routing too, right? Yeah, I think that will work out for us. Okay, let's wait for it to load a few moments later. Alright, it's about to finish right now, right? Okay, now that's loaded for us, right? So now when we load to that page, it has this test works, right? But now it's always routing to that component, right? So how we can go about fixing that issue is by actually by going to this router, actually the navbar, right? The navbar. Alright, so the first approach that you'd want to take is actually have route. I could have a route or a link, right? A link, and then I'll just pass in match. Now I'll just pass in an empty one, right? Yeah, I think that's like perfect way of doing it. Like, and then just for the table, right, I'll just navigate to the home page, right? So for the table, I would navigate to this table, right, route, right, and then that's fine, and that's fine, right? All right, so what we will then want to do is actually have our router, right? So in our constructor, we'll have this private router equals to this router, right? All right, so what we want to do is then have set this dot navigate, this dot router, right, dot navigate by URL, and then we'll just want to navigate to this tabs dot link, right? I don't know if that's gonna work, right? Yeah. So now you see that as we're navigating in the tables, it will then render this tables component, right? But all the other pages will just keep on rendering this test page, right? Because all of them are set to empty, right? So yeah, so I think we are done with everything that we needed to do for this actual tutorial. So with all that being said, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Peace.